The 1980s gave us some of the most legendary action heroes in cinema history. From Arnold Schwarzenegger's unstoppable John Matrix in Commando, tearing through enemies with pure brute force, to Sylvester Stallone's John Rambo in First Blood, a one-man army shaped by war and survival. And of course, Bruce Willis as John McClane in Die Hard, redefining the action hero as the everyman who refuses to quit. These characters didn't just fight bad guys, they defined what it meant to be a badass on the big screen. John Matrix, Commando, 1985. John Matrix, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando, is the ultimate 80s action powerhouse. A retired Special Forces colonel, he's drawn back into battle when his daughter is kidnapped, and nothing will stand in his way. What makes Matrix so badass isn't just his brute strength, but his unstoppable determination. He takes on armies single-handedly, storms enemy bases, and mows down villains with an arsenal of weapons. But it's more than firepower, it's the attitude. With ice-cold one-liners, explosive combat, and Schwarzenegger's larger-than-life presence, John Matrix became the embodiment of the over-the-top 80s action hero. Frank Dux, Bloodsport, 1988. Jean-Claude Van Damme cemented his action star status with his breakout role as Frank Dux in Bloodsport. Based on a supposedly true story, Frank is an American martial artist who enters the Kumite, a brutal underground tournament where the best fighters in the world compete with no rules. What makes Frank so badass is his discipline, lightning-fast kicks, and that legendary split-legged fighting style that became Van Damme's signature. He faces down brutal opponents, including the terrifying Chong Li, relying on resilience, skill, and heart to come out on top. With its over-the-top action, raw energy, and Van Damme's iconic moves, Bloodsport turned Frank Dux into one of the most unforgettable martial arts heroes of the 80s. Colonel James Braddock, Missing in Action, 1984. Chuck Norris brings pure grit to the role of Colonel James Braddock in Missing in Action. A hardened Vietnam War veteran, Braddock is a one-man army who refuses to leave his fellow soldiers behind. What makes Braddock so badass is his relentless determination. Armed with machine guns, grenades, and martial arts, he storms enemy camps and takes on impossible odds, all to rescue POWs forgotten by the world. He's not just a fighter, he's a symbol of loyalty and justice. Braddock's calm demeanor and unstoppable drive made him an 80s action legend, embodying the never-surrender spirit that defined the era's toughest heroes. John McClane, Die Hard, 1998. John McClane, played by Bruce Willis, redefined the action hero of the 80s. Unlike the muscle-bound giants of the era, McClane was just a regular New York cop, barefoot, bleeding, and way out of his depth. Trapped in Nakatomi Plaza on Christmas Eve, he takes on a building full of terrorists with nothing but grit, wit, and a serious dose of sarcasm. What makes McClane so badass isn't invincibility, but vulnerability. He gets hurt, he struggles, but he never stops fighting. Armed with clever one-liners and relentless determination, McClane proved you didn't need super strength to be a legend, just guts, brains, and a very loud yippee-ki-yay mother ducker. Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981. Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones is one of cinema's most iconic adventurers. By day, he's a brilliant archaeologist and professor. But once the hat goes on and the whip comes out, he transforms into a daring hero who faces danger head-on. What makes Indy such a badass isn't just his toughness, it's his wit, courage, and sheer refusal to back down. Whether he's dodging traps, fighting Nazis, or outrunning a giant boulder, he does it all with grit and a smirk. He's not invincible. He takes hits, stumbles, and even admits fear of snakes. But that humanity only makes his bravery more legendary. Indiana Jones is proof that brains, brawn, and boldness can make history. Dylan, Predator, 1987. See, in Predator, Carl Weathers plays Dylan, a tough-as-nails CIA operative who teams up with Arnold Schwarzenegger's Dutch in the deadly jungles of Central America. Dillon isn't just muscle. He's a man with government secrets pushing the mission forward, even when it's clear things aren't what they say. What makes him so badass is the mix of brains. Brawn, he's a strategist, a fighter, and when the predator finally strikes, Dillon doesn't run. Armed with his machine gun, he makes a last stand, showing both courage and loyalty in the face of certain death. With his iconic handshake turned arm wrestle moment against Schwarzenegger, Carl Weathers cemented Dillon as one of the most unforgettable action figures of the 80s. He-Man, Masters of the Universe, 1987. In Masters of the Universe, Dolph Lundgren brings to life one of the most iconic heroes of the 80s, He-Man. Wielding the mystical power sword and the famous battle cry, "I have the power." He-Man stands as Eternia's greatest warrior, defending his world against the evil Skeletor. What makes him such a badass is not just his incredible strength and combat skill, but his unshakable courage and sense of duty. Even when Skeletor invades Earth, He-Man doesn't hesitate, fighting through legions of enemies with sheer determination. With his larger-than-life presence, Dolph Lundgren embodied the raw, muscle-bound heroism of the decade, turning He-Man into a cinematic symbol of power, bravery, and pure 80s action energy. Snake Plissken, Escape from New York, 1981. Kurt Russell redefined the anti-hero with his role as Snake Plissken in Escape from New York. Sporting an eye patch, a gravelly voice, and a don't-care attitude, Snake is a former soldier turned outlaw, forced into a suicide mission inside Manhattan, now a maximum security prison. What makes him so badass is his mix of cunning, combat skills, and sheer indifference to authority. Snake isn't a shining hero, he's a reluctant savior, surviving through grit, sarcasm, and ruthless efficiency. Plissken's rebellious aura and iconic style turn him into a cult legend of the 80s, proving that sometimes the most unforgettable heroes are the ones who don't even want the job. Max Rockatansky, Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, 1981. Mel Gibson's Max Rockatansky is the ultimate lone wolf of the wasteland. Once a cop in a collapsing world, by The Road Warrior, he's become a hardened drifter, a man of few words, haunted by loss and driven only by survival. What makes Max so badass is his grit and resourcefulness. Armed with his shotgun, his iconic V8 Interceptor, and sheer determination, he roams the desolate highways, taking on vicious marauders and warlords. He's not invincible, but his ability to outthink and outfight enemies in a brutal world makes him unforgettable. Max is the perfect mix of rugged toughness and reluctant heroism, a symbol of endurance in a land where only the strongest and smartest survive. John Rambo, First Blood, 1982. John Rambo, brought to life by Sylvester Stallone, isn't just an action hero. He's a symbol of survival and raw resilience. A troubled Vietnam veteran drifting through small-town America, Rambo is pushed to the edge when he's harassed by local authorities. What makes Rambo so badass in First Blood isn't sheer firepower, but his cunning. Using guerrilla tactics, traps, in his military training, he turns the forest into his weapon, outsmarting an entire police force. He's quiet, calculating, and unstoppable, a one-man army shaped by war. Stallone gave Rambo a mix of muscle and emotion, making him one of the most iconic and complex heroes of the 80s. And that's our look at the most badass action heroes of the 80s. Which one is your favorite? Drop it in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more epic movie moments.